On the night of November 13th, 1974, in the quiet village of Amityville, New York, one of the most infamous mass murders in American history took place. In a large Dutch colonial-style house at 112 Ocean Avenue, 6 members of the DeFeo family were brutally murdered as they slept in their beds. The killer was Ronald DeFeo Jr., the eldest son of the family, who was just 23 years old at the time. What began as a horrific real-life tragedy would later spiral into a web of controversy, lies, and exploitation, forming the foundation of the so-called Amityville horror story. A story that many don't realize began with cold-blooded murder, not ghosts. The DeFeo family consisted of Ronald Sr., his wife Louise, and their 5 children: Ronald Jr., also known as Butch, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew. The family lived what appeared to be a normal middle-class life. Ronald Sr. worked at his father-in-law's car dealership in Brooklyn, and although he was known to be strict and at times violent, there was nothing to suggest the horrors that would unfold. Ronald Jr., however, was a different story. He was troubled from an early age, disruptive in school, prone to aggression, and known to use drugs heavily, including heroin and LSD. His relationship with his father was particularly volatile. By the time he was in his early 20s, Ronald Jr. was already displaying violent tendencies and was increasingly unstable. On the morning of November 13th, Ronald Jr. walked into Henry's bar in Amityville, visibly shaken. He shouted to the patrons, "You gotta help me. I think my mother and father are shot." A group of people rushed with him to 112 Ocean Avenue, where they found the bodies of Ronald Sr. and Louise in their bedroom. The police were called, and a full search of the house revealed 4 more victims: the DeFeo children, all shot dead in their beds. The community was in shock. It seemed impossible that an entire family could be slaughtered in a house where neighbors claimed to hear nothing out of the ordinary. At first, Ronald Jr. claimed the murders were the work of a mob hitman, specifically someone named Louis Fellini. He told police a convoluted story about how Fellini had come to collect a debt and murdered his family instead. But within 24 hours, his story unraveled. Under intense interrogation and mounting evidence, Ronald Jr. eventually confessed. "It all started so fast. Once I started, I just couldn't stop," he told police. He admitted to retrieving a .35 caliber Marlin rifle from his room, walking from bedroom to bedroom and executing each member of his family while they slept. He shot his parents first, then moved on to his siblings. Strangely, despite firing a total of 8 shots, not a single neighbor heard gunfire, and none of the family members appeared to have awakened during the killings. There were no signs of struggle, no indication that any of them had tried to escape. During his trial, Ronald Jr.'s defense was handled by attorney William Weber. The strategy was to plead insanity. Weber claimed that Ronald Jr. heard voices in his head that told him to kill his family. He painted a picture of a young man driven by demons, literal or metaphorical, and argued that he was not responsible for his actions. Psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Schwartz testified for the defense, stating that DeFeo suffered from dissociative disorder and was driven by an irresistible impulse, a key phrase in insanity defenses. However, the prosecution, led by Gerard Sullivan, brought their own psychiatric expert, Dr. Harold Zolan, who concluded that while Ronald Jr. had antisocial personality disorder, he was fully aware of his actions at the time of the murders. Zolan argued that DeFeo was not legally insane and knew exactly what he was doing. He had acted deliberately, with a clear plan, and had tried to fabricate an alibi by blaming a mobster. Furthermore, he had taken a bath, changed his clothes, discarded evidence, and gone to work the next morning as if nothing had happened. The jury agreed with the prosecution. On November 21, 1975, Ronald DeFeo Jr. was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences. He would spend the rest of his life in prison, where he died in March 2021 at the age of 69. But the story doesn't end there. Just over a year after the murders, in December 1975, the Lutz family, George, Kathy, and their 3 children, moved into the now infamous house on Ocean Avenue. They bought it for a discounted price of $80,000, fully aware of what had happened there. Within 28 days, they fled the house, claiming it was haunted by demonic forces. Their accounts included levitating beds, green slime oozing from the walls, and sightings of a pig-like demon with glowing red eyes. Their story became the basis for the 1977 book, The Amityville Horror, and numerous Hollywood films. But what's less known, and often deliberately hidden beneath layers of supernatural fiction, is the very real manipulation that took place behind the scenes. Years after the Lutzes left the house, attorney William Weber, the same man who defended Ronald DeFeo Jr., came forward with a stunning revelation. In a 1979 interview, Weber admitted that the entire haunting story was a hoax, fabricated over several bottles of wine. He said he and the Lutzes concocted the tale to sell books and gain media attention, and more importantly, to bolster the insanity defense for DeFeo in future appeals. Weber said, "We created this horror story over many bottles of wine. I told them about Ronnie's claim of hearing voices, and the Lutzes took it from there. We were going to make a lot of money from it." George and Kathy Lutz denied these claims, maintaining until their deaths that their experiences in the house were genuine. However, inconsistencies in their story, along with failed lie detector tests, legal disputes, and the fact that no subsequent owners of the house reported anything unusual, have led many to believe that their version of events was, at best, highly exaggerated, and at worst, a calculated fraud. Even more damning was the fact that Ronald DeFeo himself repeatedly changed his story in the years following his conviction. At various times, he claimed that his sister Dawn had helped commit the murders, that his mother had killed the children, or that voices told him to kill only his father. But things spiraled out of control. Each version contradicted the last, and none matched the physical evidence. His credibility diminished further with each bizarre claim. In one recorded interview from prison, DeFeo stated, "It was all about the money, the house, the story, all of it. They wanted a movie deal. I was the only one who went to prison." This comment aligns closely with what Weber had said about trying to build a case for an insanity plea, using the haunting narrative as a convenient distraction. To this day, the Amityville murders remain a chilling example of how a real tragedy can be transformed into entertainment. The 6 members of the DeFeo family, Ronald Sr., Louise, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew, were brutally murdered in their sleep, and that horrifying truth has too often been overshadowed by tales of ghosts, demons, and Hollywood drama. The real horror was not supernatural. It was the cold, calculated act of a son turning on his family and the exploitation of their deaths for fame and profit. Behind every paranormal claim, there is a courtroom transcript, a crime scene photo, and a grieving extended family who lost 6 loved ones in one night. As the media capitalized on the supposed haunting, the real story, the story of domestic violence, untreated mental illness, drug abuse, and legal manipulation, faded into the background. The DeFeo case serves as a sobering reminder that sometimes the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. Not because of ghosts, but because of what people are capable of when desperation, greed, and brutality intersect. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue still stands, but it no longer bears its infamous address. It has been remodeled, repainted, and renamed in an effort to escape its history. Yet the echoes of what happened there continue to linger, not in the form of spirits, but in the legacy of a crime that shocked a nation and became a grotesque spectacle for profit. This is the real story of the Amityville murders, not the one told in books or movies, but the one grounded in crime scene evidence, conflicting testimonies, and the calculated attempt to twist reality into myth. Behind every sensational headline and best-selling novel lies a deeper, darker truth. And in Amityville, that truth was soaked in blood long before the cameras arrived.